Hey guys, and welcome to the first episode of GDL Presents, wherein we highlight a developer. Specifically, we're looking at developers behind some of the Chrome experiments as of late. And today we have with us Michael Deal. Michael is a developer in Portland, Oregon, interactive developer, who's made some of the coolest stuff I've seen. And we're going to take a look at some of his projects, talk about how they've been built, and talk about kind of how he develops things. So, Michael, why don't you say hello?
Hello.
And nice.
Thank you.
So, Michael, you develop a lot of things. Like, tell me about like what the sort of projects that you like to work on.
I like to work on projects that have lots of colors involved and that have like audio's extra bonus. But yeah, colors are kind of a prerequisite for a project for me.
I dig it. So you've done a lot of work with Canvas, SVG, a lot of audio stuff with Web Audio API and other audio, and a pretty just comprehensive set of projects. So we're going to dive into a few of them. But first I wanted to actually highlight one of the things that you did for a site of ours a little bit ago, HTML5 Rocks. You made one of the coolest tutorials that we've had on there about typographic text effects. And so this was a great article where we kind of dove into some of the ways to kind of show off text, giving it a neon approach, a stereoscopic kind of 3D approach. And so all these manipulations were just done in Canvas, right?
Yep. They're all in Canvas.
I think I even you had like a little demo page where you could kind of swoop in things. Oh yeah, it was this.
Yeah, so they the different effects, they take a heavy usage of the global composition operation, which allows you to mesh layers in different ways. And this one in particular is more of an animated text effect. This one is you can do inner shadows and outer shadows, glows, all sorts of things like that.
It's really cool. Yeah, this is fantastic. I actually took some of this code and I made a little birthday card for someone.
Cool.
using this approach. It's
That's
kind
awesome.
of nice and reusable, good quality effect.
I'd love to see that.
Yeah, sure. So yeah, this is great. So I wanted to dive into one of your larger projects that I think people might have seen. Sketchpad was one of the larger showcase projects that we've seen on the Chrome Web Store a while ago. And so this is, you want to talk about kind of the application and how it's built and kind of the functionality that you have inside of it?
Sure. Yeah, the application was actually built back in 2008. So it's a little bit of an older project, but it's held up well over time. It takes heavy usage of the canvas element, as all my projects do, and definitely very heavy on the style. The styling was probably the trickiest part, getting all the different types of gradients and things working together in the right manner. But yeah, it was a really big learning project for me. It's kind of where I learned all about how to really program in JavaScript and Canvas. That was my first big project.
Yeah. And so I mean, this is a big application. You have a menu with these flyout. It's a little hard to see on the video, but we have this really smooth animation as all these little non-modal dialogues kind of fly out. A full toolbar. How did you go about kind of structuring the code for this?
Structuring. Well, that's probably not the best example of my work.
Sure.
Because like I said, I was just starting to learn how to put that all together. But I guess ever since then, in writing the newer version of Sketchpad, I've tried to write everything in a sandbox. So I'll write one module, one effect in a sandbox that's completely disconnected from everything else. And then after that, I integrate it into the rest of it. And what's really been useful to me too is doing different projects where I can reuse the project for different types of things, and then the code base gets a lot cleaner that way.
A common adage is the key to writing a large JavaScript application is to never write a large JavaScript application. Break it up into the modules and the libraries. Yeah, it's really wise.
Totally, yeah.
Okay, so we won't view source on this application.
I should really compress that, actually. It's pretty bad.
All right, cool. We'll go ahead and take a look at MIDI Jas, which is a really fantastic library that you put together for taking MIDI data and piping it out into sound through the Web Audio API. Is that a good description? Can you talk about kind of how it works?
Sure. So the MIDI JS project, it allows you to, there's a backend to it where you can encode your own sound fonts into Base64. So you'll take a sound font.
What's a sound font?
A sound font is basically any MIDI application, any type of MIDI instrument has a sound font representing it. So if you have a flute or a guitar or a piano, each of those have their own sound font. And there's a bunch of different there's a bunch of different resources out there where you can buy sound fonts, and so you can really sorry.
No problem.
Got tea in my teeth too. Yeah. Sorry, what was the question again?
I was just trying to understand. Tell me what sound fonts are.
Okay, so a sound font it's basically a representation of an instrument that they take samples of like a piano at different types of hits, and then so they combine them together to make this sound font that kind of spans the whole voicing range of a piano. And the MIDI JS project, it kind of it just basically allows you to use one of those sound fonts and then encode it into MP3 or OGG format, and then you can include it in your project. It's not like a really great representation of the sound, but for piano and short hit instruments like a guitar, it works really well.
Yeah.
In the future, as the MIDI API is actually introduced, that will be extremely exciting. I'm not sure if you've heard about that at all. But the W3C is actually starting to put together the specs for the MIDI API,
for
which
MIDI.
is
Yeah,
super exciting.
I've seen a little bit of that. So MIDI is MIDI JS is pretty powerful, and so there's a lot of things going on inside of it. And one of the things that we have, so we have the output all goes through the Web Audio API. Is that right?
That's correct.
Cool. And Web Audio API is somewhat new. I think it's been out shipping in Chrome for about a year or so.
Yeah, that sounds right.
But just recently we heard that Mozilla will be developing their own implementation of Web Audio API, which kind of resolves a long-standing kind of situation. So,
with the Audio Data API.
Yeah, exactly. So I think that was good news that everyone was pretty excited about.
Totally.
And so with MIDI JS, so a few other people I think have already used this. Is that right?
Yes, that's correct. A buddy of mine used it to create a little Simon Says application, and another guy created a really cool application where you can actually watch MIDI drop down as if it was a Star Wars like the intro to Star Wars.
Cool. We can actually bring that up here in this case. So the project's called Euphony. Is that right?
That's great.
And so Euphony is a Chrome experiment, and so we can get a view of it here. So here we have a MIDI going through MIDI JS. I think the visualization is in 3JS, and we can kind of pan around with the mouse. We can use the scroll wheel to kind of zoom in and out. and get a view of kind of like all the sound as it plays through the keys. It's really cool visualization of music.
Yeah, he did a really great job on that. That really blew my mind. And he also used Spark.js, which is another great library that you can use along with 3.js.
What's Spark.js do?
It's a particle engine.
So that handled when the note hit the key and it kind of blew up with a little bit of glow.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's really great. Cool. So inside, I wanted to touch on Event.js, and this is a library that you've written and used in a few projects. Could you just kind of give a description of what Event.js, as it is pretty generically named, what kind of things does it capture and take care of for you?
Well, Event.js I pretty much include in every project I do. It makes it really, really easy for me to develop for both mobile and desktop at the same time without really even thinking about it. It supports various gestures like swiping and rotating and pinching and stuff. And one cool thing is that you can actually pinch with 10 fingers or 12 fingers, which isn't really that useful, but it's kind of fun. So
I think you can actually, you could use 10 fingers and a nose. And I actually recently heard that a tongue is conductive.
There you go.
Yeah, so
you need 11 fingers in there.
If it was a drawing app, you could draw with your tongue. I'm just saying you could.
I haven't tried that yet, but I definitely will give that a shot.
What's on iPads?
Right after we're done here.
That's cool. So it handles, so multi-finger pinch, zoom, rotate, those kind of typical gestures that you see.
Right.
Yeah. And actually, so I think most people don't understand kind of the capability of multi-touch JavaScript that we actually have available. Not many people think that you can actually check, multiple touches at the same time and be able to manifest with that. But it's actually not too tricky.
No, it's basically exactly the same as implementing a regular touch or regular pointer click, except for you're working with an array. You're working with 3 different arrays, but you only really have to work with one array. So yeah, it's pretty. They did a really great job in implementing that, I think.
Great. Okay, so let's take a look at another one of your projects. This one is called Sphere, and Sphere is a way to kind of view a series of color palettes. Is that how you describe it?
Color harmony formulas.
Okay, color harmony formulas. And so we have a different few formulas to pick from: the triadic, the 5-tone, or the clash. We can manipulate hue all in one go, or we can play with saturation, but really kind of get an interesting palette that prescribes to certain color theory that I'm not terribly familiar with, right?
And that's one theme in my projects generally, is that I don't know anything about something, and so I want to program it, and that's how I learn. That like color piano or the color sphere, it's all just a big learning process for me.
Cool. So yeah, we can take a look at color piano now. So color piano is similar to what we saw with Euphony, and we have kind of a 2D visualization of kind of sound going into keys. And here we have a number of your projects kind of coming into this, right? We have MIDI Jas, EventJS. I would take a look at the script, but it's minified as it should be. It's actually not even coming up. Oh, there we go. So what kind of what was there any tricky part in creating color piano?
Oh yeah, it's been a really long process actually. I think I started in 2007, just kind of toying with the idea.
Wow.
But the really big problem was there was no way to make the sound part of it. So it would work like, you could see visually what was going on, but you couldn't actually hear what was going on. And so I made a little widget for, the Canvas or the Apple desktop. But and then I made a little API that ties into Java native interface, which was cool, but you had to start up Java to get it working. And so like finally HTML5 came out with the audio tag, which was cool, but it still was like, it sounded like there was a drunken, I don't know, drunken pirate playing the piano.
Yeah, it didn't pick up on the responsivity of the audio.
Exactly.
It was higher latency than you needed it to be.
Totally, which was kind of artistic and fun in a way, like hearing my computer sound like a drunken pirate, but it wasn't what I was looking for. And so when the Web Audio API came out, the coolest thing in my opinion about it was that it allows you to plan notes to hit exactly at a specific time.
Right.
And that makes it possible. That's what makes it possible.
Yeah. Yeah, it's great, and it's really well developed. And you said that it's even Color Piano is even used in schools?
Yeah, that's what I've heard. Really thrilling to be part of the educational process. That's kind of one theme you might notice in a lot of my projects is that I try to teach people stuff. And so just really cool to hear. There was a school in Canada, and then there was a school in Eastern America.
That's very cool. So actually, one of the things that I'm seeing on the Color Piano, and I see it in a few of your projects, is this loading spinner.
Yeah.
It's kind of a common component that you use across a few of these apps. I'm just curious, in this particular component, how is it created?
It's a canvas element. It uses Bezier curves to create rounded rectangles, and it uses the global composition lighter to blend the colors together in a nice way.
Yeah.
And actually, I'll be releasing that loader.js sometime. I could do it this week if people were interested in it, but I just haven't got around to it yet. But that's definitely in the books.
Cool. Yeah, it's great. How do you handle, so like you have a lot of projects where you're using new APIs. How do you handle the situation of the browser doesn't support it?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, I've definitely got a lot of flack in the past for not supporting IE6 back in the day.
Yes.
Got really, but like Flash Canvas is great. There's a lot of polyfills available, as you're aware of,
Yeah. Do you make use of these polyfills, or do you just
definitely.
Okay.
Like the Blob Builder API and
Sure.
request animation frame, and so yeah, the polyfills are a real saver. Flash Canvas in particular has been really great for supporting older browsers like IE6 and IE7 when using Flash instead.
Yeah. So it's something, and I guess these projects, you have a little bit of wiggle room as far as your browser support, but you normally like shoot for, try and include IE8 if you can, but sometimes depending on like how much audio there is, I guess you're limited.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, I try to support as many people as possible, but there's only so much time in the day to support those things, and it's a lot more fun to build new applications, obviously. So it's nice when the browsers actually support them out of the box, like IE9, which is I'm pretty stoked about, and all the new browsers really are. It's just such a nice landscape nowadays compared to what it was a few years ago.
Yeah, it's definitely getting better. Great, and so I wanted to bring up a more recent project that you've been working on recently called, it's your 2.0 of Sketchpad.
Yeah.
And so it has, comparing this to your earlier version of Sketchpad, it's kind of a much more modern UI. Do you want to talk a little bit about kind of how this one is constructed and the feature set here?
Sure. So Sketchpad 2.0 allows you to create a drawing. You can undo, redo. All the layers are stored in vectors, so you can change the color. If you're on a stamp brush, you can change the type of stamp you're using. You can select multiple layers, change multiple colors at the same time. And everything is stored into a JSON on the server, which then can be recreated later on. The images, you can drag and drop images and SVGs into the browser, and then you can play around with image filters and stuff. And again, those are non-destructive as well.
This is great. And I see, I just noticed you have a little bit of effects with these dialogues coming up. Let me see if I can load this back up. Loading.
When I use the Google Font API, which is really, really fantastic, there's hundreds of fonts available for developers to use.
Yeah.
And the fonts, the text tool is probably the hardest thing in there to do, actually, because instead of having a text box and then showing what the text looks like later, it's actually, you can just place your text and see exactly what it looks like right on the screen, which involves figuring out the metrics of the text, which isn't available, but you can find through like tricky CSS and HTML measurements and stuff. But so it's possible, which is cool. It took me a long time to figure out how.
Of detecting the metrics of the text?
Yeah, to detect exactly where the text is on the screen, so you can create a text box, which is, so that's just a canvas element right there. Everything's in canvas. There's 2 layers of canvas, no divs or anything like that.
So generally, how do you detect the positioning of the text?
Well, so I've got a little article on my website that tells you, kind of goes over it. But basically, you would have a div, a dummy div,
yep.
and you'd put some text into it, and then you'd apply like text baseline bottom or whatever, different things to measure different types of things, like where the center line is, where the bottom of it is, where the top of it is. And then there's also overhangs, so sometimes text goes outside of a box.
Yep.
Ascenders and descenders. And so for that, you have to actually calculate the pixels. So you have to run it through a bounding box calculation to find out where the actual edges of the ascenders and descenders are.
Yeah. So are you taking like literally the lowercase x to determine the x height and finding out where the pixels end from a vertical perspective are?
The thing, that was an original idea, but the thing is the x height's not really as, it doesn't really hold through as much as you'd hope it would.
Yeah.
So everything's actually calculated on demand. So if you write in a paragraph, then it will calculate each letter individually.
Wow, that's fantastic.
It uses the, I forget, uses some sort of funny text. Here, let me check it out real quick. Refresh.
Oh yeah, so I was going to mention a few of these dialogues. We kind of have this nice effect where it pops the screen out from a transform perspective.
Oh yeah.
And these are actually from another developer.
Mm-hmm. Yes, that's from Hakeem. He's a developer over at Quickie, and he's just fantastic. He makes different modals and he's been putting them out a lot in the last year.
Yeah.
And they really make your application just pop, like my application didn't really look that cool, and then I threw that in there, and then all of a sudden I was like, wow, this is so cool.
Yeah, it looks great. It has a really great effect.
Super appreciated that he puts that stuff out there for us.
Yeah. So, yeah,
it's mini.js and avgrund.js.
Oh, okay. Mini.js?
MENY.js and avgrund, AVGRUND.js.
Got it.
He's got a bunch of other cool things in there too.
Very cool. So I wanted to ask you a little bit of like how you actually do your development. What are you like? What is your workflow as far as the editor that you're using? Do you use linting? Kind of like how do you iterate on your project?
Mm-hmm.
Do you write unit tests for these apps, or like that kind of development experience of these things?
Sure. Well, I definitely think unit tests are a really great idea, and it's something that I'm going to get into soon because otherwise you're going to get like OCD, or not OCD, but repetitive stress
Yes.
problems with your wrist. But so I do all my programming in BB Edit right now.
Okay.
I tried to switch over to Sublime Text, but the diff wasn't quite up to my standards. But Sublime Text is looking really, really cool. But right now I'm still using BB Edit for everything.
Yeah. And do you use, like, you're using source control locally? Do you use are you using something like JS Hint or JS Lint just to kind of like check your sanity as far as when you're writing code?
I use JS Beautifier to like make my code pretty.
Yeah.
But as far as sanity checking, I take it into older browsers and see if it breaks, and then and then go from there.
Yeah.
But that's definitely another thing that I probably should be doing, but I haven't been. You know.
Understandably. Yeah. So it seems like, I mean, I ask because with applications of this scale, it starts to get tricky to, you'll have a bug and you think you fixed it and it'll come back.
Totally.
It's a little tricky to manage. So you were mentioning before, you find yourself writing your apps as far as like smaller libraries and modules kind of coupled together. What's your sort of system for building out those essential components?
Well, I like to start a new project as much as possible. It's really nice because it just kind of clears my mind, and you don't have to really keep. When you're working on a really big project, you have all this stuff loaded into your mind, and there's just so many things. But if you can get it into like a small component, like just some sort of an effect or something,
Yeah.
then it just makes it so much more simple. So I put everything in a sandbox, and then I just plug away at it from there.
Sounds good.
So, but actually for my SVG support, I did do some sort of testing where it will you can put the SVG in there. Then to the left of that, you'll see what it looks like in Canvas. Then you'll look to the bottom of that, and you'll see what it looks like in Canvas re-rendered through my VOB format. And then on the bottom right, you can see what it looks like back in SVG after it goes back all the way around. And it's supposed to look the same both ways. So visual testing, I've done that a little bit.
Very cool.
Which is really handy. I'm more of a visual guy.
Yeah, absolutely. So, yeah, you make use of a lot of really great techniques. Who are where do you pick up these techniques? Like, what sites are you reading, or people do you follow to kind of keep track of this sort of stuff?
Oh gosh, like back in the day, it used to be Ajaxian. That was really cool.
Yep.
Badass JS is cool. Creative JS is great.
Yeah,
Twitter is amazing. Twitter seems to be the place right now to really get inspired and see everything that's happening. If you follow people like you and all sorts of there's all sorts of great people out there posting these things. Chrome Experiments. Obviously, you get a lot of inspiration there. But yeah, I just basically try to keep a pulse on what's going on as much as possible, and I just kind of focus on trying to stay up to date as much as possible as what people are doing. It's really mind blowing what people are doing nowadays. Like it's just insane.
Yep.
I'm
Essentially,
really impressed with the 3D work, especially.
Yeah. Having all the 2D graphics APIs that we have now, combining with what's available in audio, and the experience is getting pretty heavy pretty quick. Pointer lock just landed in Chrome a little bit ago. That's more of a 3D thing, but there's a lot going on, so it's pretty exciting.
Yeah, it's so nice that you can finally control basically all the outputs the computer has. Like you got the audio controller, you got the pixel control, and so you can do basically most things you need to do. The file management's still not quite there, but they're making a lot of progress on it. It's really cool to see all the new things they're doing there too, and obviously connecting into MIDI ports and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Game controller API, which is really interesting as well.
Yeah. Cool. Well, this is great. And so I encourage everyone to go check out your blog. It's over at mudcube.be. I guess is I would.
OneCube.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's at Mudcube. You'll find it. And so it goes through all your projects. We went through the older Sketchpad and the newer Sketchpad, but you also ported this to mobile. It's called Sketch Mobile and has a kind of a new interface that's designed exclusively for touch and smaller screens. So it's fantastic. And kind of walks through a lot of your other projects and all the stuff that you put out there, including the colored website and community that we didn't even get a chance to touch on today. But they have a lot. It's a great community around color palettes. Even this, probably the best gradient creation tool that I've seen is inside Colored. So excellent stuff. So I encourage everyone.
Thank you so much. Yeah, that was a collaborative project with my buddy Daniel Christopher, who works right next to me. We've been kind of working together for the last 12 years, a little bit.
Nice, cool. And so follow Michael at on both GitHub and Twitter at Mudcube, on G+, at Michael Deal, and that's about it. So Michael, thank you very much for joining us. This has been fantastic.
Cool. Thank you so much for having me. You guys have a great day and enjoy the rest of the summer here.
Cool. We will. Awesome. Thanks very much. Bye.
All right, take care. Bye-bye.